Joining us here in Washington is the President-elect's White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. Reince, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thanks for having me this morning.
President-elect Trump told me last weekend that the CIA conclusion that Russia interfered with the election to help him was, quote, ridiculous, and it could have been some guy in a basement. Well, now the CIA director, John Brennan, says he's met with the director of national intelligence and the head of the FBI, and, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference. Question, does the president-elect accept the consensus of the intel community?
Well, I think a lot of these things, though, Chris, are coming through third parties. I mean, we haven't heard from Comey. When Clapper...
Yeah, this is CIA Director Brennan. You think he's lying about what Jim Comey thinks?
No, I don't think he is, but it sure would be nice to hear from everybody. I mean, if there is this conclusive opinion among all of these intelligence agencies, then they should issue a report or they should stand in front of a camera and make the case. But that all being said, let's put that aside for a second. I think the real question is why the Democrats and why these electors and why MoveOn.org and all of these organizations are doing everything they can to delegitimize the outcome of the election. I mean, they started out with a recount in states that they didn't move the dial in anywhere. In fact, President-elect Trump received more votes when that was done. Then they went after this Diebold fiasco, which was proven to be totally untrue. Now they're demanding intelligence reports.
Machines.
Right, now they're going forward tomorrow with this attempt to intimidate and harass electors. I mean, we've got electors that are receiving 200,000 emails. But nothing is going to change.
But Reince, I'm going to get to that on the electors. I'm asking you a simple question. Does the president-elect accept the consensus, and that's what John Brennan said it was, the consensus of the intel community about Russian interference and its intent?
I think he would accept the conclusion if these intelligence professionals would get together, put out a report, show the American people that they're actually on the same page as opposed to third parties through the Washington Post.
This wasn't a third party.
Right, but
John
we haven't
Brennan
heard from Clapper. But we haven't heard from Comey. I mean, so look, I think that these guys should be straight with the American people and come out and say it. I don't think they've been clear about it. I think that it's been all over the map.
So John Brennan, his statement is not enough for you?
Not when you have multiple people saying different things coming through third parties and media reports. But that all being said, let's put it aside. Let's assume it's true. There's no evidence that shows that the outcome of the election was changed because of a couple dozen John Podesta emails that were out there across. I would propose to you.
I agree with that, and that's fair, but I'm asking you about the specific question of Russian intelligence. Here's what President Obama said in his news conference on Friday. Take a look.
Unless the American people genuinely think that the professionals in the CIA, the FBI, are less trustworthy than the Russians, then people should pay attention to what our intelligence agencies say.
And that's really the question I'm focusing on. We'll get to the electors in a minute and what the Democrats are trying to do. Does President Trump accept or trust the intelligence community? This is the CIA director saying this, not a third party. Or does he trust the Russian denials?
Look, I think that they're almost there, except for the fact that they haven't been totally upfront and transparent in their opinion as to who, what, where, and how this all happened. And I think they'll get there. And when they do, we can hear from the president-elect and get his opinion. But the reality of all of this, and all of these players that are spinning these reports, are doing it for a political purpose, which is to delegitimize the outcome of the election.
Do you think John Brennan, the CIA director?
But I think when these things were leaked last week with no, in the Washington Post and the New York Times, they were leaked by people within the intelligence communities to these newspapers or through some third-party source, is not appropriate. And then people like us have to answer to these third parties about something that all of these intelligence agencies have not made 100% clear as to what's happened.
You may say that this falls in that area of a political agenda, but White House spokesman Josh Earnest went further than President Obama did this week, suggesting that there might be some connection between President-elect Trump's campaign and Russian interference. Here he is.
Mr. Trump obviously knew that Russia was engaged in malicious cyber activity that was helping him and hurting Secretary Clinton's campaign.
Two questions. One, do you flatly deny any contact, any coordination between Mr. Trump, his campaign, his associates, and the Russians in interfering?
I mean, even this question is insane. I mean, of course we didn't interface with the Russians. I mean, this whole thing is a spin job, and I think what the Democrats ought to do is look in the mirror and face the reality that they lost the election, and they lost the election because they're so and completely out of touch with the American people that they're still shell-shocked and they can't believe it. And what is their response? Recounts, Russians, leaked CIA reports, and now the press secretary of the president saying that the reason Hillary Clinton lost wasn't because she blew it in Benghazi, she blew it with Russia, she blew it as Secretary of State, she ignored the entire Midwest, and people didn't like the product. That's why Hillary Clinton lost.
Do you think Josh Earnest was speaking for the president there, and that this was kind of a good cop, bad cop deal, that he was saying what the president really thinks while the president was acting above the fray?
I would like to think that he was going rogue at that moment, and that it wouldn't be so coordinated among, you know, our current president and someone that we're working pretty well with, to tell you the truth, between him and Dennis McDonough. They've actually been great to work with, and things are going very smoothly. So,
but you don't believe that. You don't believe that 2 days in a row the White House press secretary went rogue.
Well, that's what I would like to think. But, you know, it really doesn't matter to us. I mean, we're moving forward with a cabinet that you've seen at lightning pace, with great Americans that are more than qualified for these positions, and a president-elect that wants to move forward.
I want to ask you specifically, because we've been touching on it, but as you know, some of the Democratic presidential electors are, and they're supposed to vote tomorrow, calling for a delay until they get the security briefing. What do you think that's about?
It's about MoveOn.org. It's about Democrats that can't accept the outcome of the election. It's about delegitimizing the American system. It's not going to work.
Well, let me ask you about it not working, because you're still head of the RNC, which has been conducting a whip count, to try to make sure that the Trump electors vote for Donald Trump. At this point, how many possible, what they call faithless electors are there who might jump ship?
Look, we expect everything to fall in line. We've got one particular individual in Texas without a faithless elector statute in Texas, but other than that, we're very confident that everything is going to be very smooth tomorrow, and this harassment from groups like MoveOn.org and the Democrat Party should stop, and it's what the American people demand.
All right. I want to do a lightning round, quick questions, quick answers, because you guys have been making a lot of news, and I want to ask you about some of it quickly. First, the nomination of ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson to be Secretary of State. Some Republican senators are concerned about his ties to Russian President Putin. Here they are.
When he gets the Friendship Award from a butcher, frankly, it's an issue that I think needs to be examined.
So my question, Mr. Tillerson, do you realize what Russia's up to here and all over the world, and are you willing to do something about it?
If those two Republicans vote against Tillerson, his nomination hangs by a single vote.
Right, and we've been working with Senator McCain and Senator Graham, Senator Rubio in Florida. We feel really confident about where we're at, and obviously getting Secretary Baker, Condoleezza Rice, Bob Gates, and so many others on board has been a real benefit. And, you know, look, this is a tough world, and I think that, you know, having relationships with people in difficult places is only a positive for Rex Tillerson. And, you know, the good Lord didn't put oil in all freedom, democracy, loving countries. And as being an executive of ExxonMobil, he had to go there and have these relationships. I think that's a total positive and win for our country and President-elect Trump.
You're still confident that Tillerson will get through?
Totally confident, 100% confident.
Okay, now that was a good lightning round answer, so let's keep that up.
There you go.
All right, China seized an underwater U.S. Navy drone this week. Some analysts say in response to President-elect Trump's response to me last weekend, in which he indicated, well, he's going to reconsider the one China policy. Now China says they're going to give back the drone. Mr. Trump tweeted out yesterday, keep it. But is there some thought about damping down these provocative remarks by President Trump? because of the Chinese response?
I don't think it's all that provocative, to tell you the truth.
To say the one China policy is up for grabs?
Well, look, we're not suggesting that we're revisiting one China policy right now, and he's not president right now, and he's respectful to the current president. But let me get to the point. The Chinese ripped a drone out of the water. President-elect Trump said this is an unprecedented act, totally inappropriate. Didn't quite use those words, but that's essentially what he said in a tweet. I think 80% of Americans think it is inappropriate to rip a drone out of the water. They then keep the drone, give it back to the rightful owner. I don't know if you'd want that drone back. I mean, who knows what... So I think every single thing he's done has been factual and has been in line with where 80% of the American people are at.
Okay. Mr. Trump has named David Friedman the ambassador to Israel. Friedman opposes the two-state solution, the idea that Israel and Palestine can live against each other, which has been the basis for U.S. diplomacy in the Middle East for decades. Does the appointment of Friedman indicate that Mr. Trump is rethinking the two-state solution?
No, I don't think it does at all. They represent the views of President-elect Trump, not their own views when they get elected and appointed into these positions. It's the same thing with all these cabinet secretaries. There's going to be things that individually people may believe in their hearts or in their minds, but ultimately it's their job to represent the President-elect of the United States and his foreign policy.
Finally, you had lunch at the White House on Friday with 11, one current and 10 former White House chiefs of staff. Going back to the Carter administration, final question. What was the single best piece of advice you got?
The single best piece of advice for me is that if you can't tell me something in my office, then don't go into the Oval Office and tell the president. In other words, people are going to talk to the president, and that's fine, but make sure that they give you a readout and you know what's going on. And the second piece of advice was never present an easy decision to the president. Only give him the hard stuff.
And how long did they say White House chiefs of staff last?
You know, it's anywhere from like 6 months to, I guess, 4 to 5 years. But, you know, the shelf life is not long.
Well, you're the person that the spears go into, right?
That's right.
Chairman Priebus, thank you. Thanks for your time. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. God bless. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Same to you. Please come back. Up next.